Her story is one that maybe some of you have actually been through and never thought you'd ever see the light of day. Her life has been a series of highs and lows. She started her own business, VR Public Relations. She was Miss Arizona, and she's here today. Would you please welcome Vanessa Rose? Hey, Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Carmen. It's such an honor to be here today.
Well, gee, thanks.
Yes.
How you like New York?
It's beautiful. My first time, I have to say. New York is a wonderful place, wonderful people, very cultural, fun.
It's going to be a little quiet here, but maybe just as well. You know, 'cause some of the stuff we're going to talk about here today it's a really powerful story of getting from an extreme craziness on one side to an extreme success and back and forth and back and forth. And sometimes life can just drive you crazy.
You know, life really definitely has its highs and its lows. And I tell you one thing, God is so good. And whenever you're going through something in life, don't fret. Know that there's always the sunshine ahead, and there's always going to be that sunshine above the clouds. And eventually those clouds are going to go away and the storm is going to be gone. Well, and God's going to bring it there.
Before we get into, you grew up in a ministry family?
I grew up in a home with my father was an entrepreneur. He always had his own companies, and we always were in the ministry. We grew up singing and leading praise and worship. My mom was, I believe every one of us have an angel put in our life, and my mother was my angel. She's had a lot of time on her knees praying for me, and she's poured her life into me, and I grew up in the ministry talking and singing and in church, yes.
So you're a good talker?
Yeah, I like to talk. I'm Italian Chilean. I use my hands. I like to talk a lot, so.
So your life was, would you say, pretty normal up until, you know,
normal.
Adolescence?
Come on, Carmen. Normal?
Well, I know.
We are family, but the fun
right.
and dysfunctional. Like I said, we're Chilean Italians. You know, I had a good upbringing. You know, I had a good family, but then again, no family's perfect.
Right.
And I believe one of the defining moments in my life to where I really started my relationship with God is, you know, each one of us are given a father and a mother here on earth. Sometimes we know them, sometimes we don't. My parents were together for 28 years, and I did have them, but unfortunately I never really had a close relationship with my father. I was never able to sit down and talk with him about things, and a lot of that began when I was 6 years old. I was sexually molested by a family member very close to my father, and my father never wanted to talk about it, and it's like it never happened. He just didn't quite know how to cope.
So do you think, was it a situation where they denied it or said that it didn't happen, or just wanted to put it aside?
It never happened. Yeah, to him, we never talked about it. The person went back to the country they were from, and...
So now this person, you're 6 years old. This thing happens to you from somebody in the family.
Yes.
You tell everybody that's supposed to be told.
Yes,
mom and dad.
My mom was there for me. My mom was infuriated, you know, but she prayed and she's like, God, I have to give this to you. And
this person then leaves the country.
That's because they were just visiting.
So now you can't find him. Or you can't at least prosecute.
We know. No, my mom, we asked him to leave.
So now it's your word against theirs, I guess.
Yes, but so we went ahead and that situation happened, and for years I couldn't talk about it.
So what did that do to you? 6 years old up into I mean, you have to, obviously, you remember it. So do you remember how you felt before and how you felt, how to change your life after?
It makes you feel, you know, used and different. It definitely puts a distrust with men there. And I think that's why I said that definitely built my relationship with God, and that brings me to a point to where I am in my life now, to realizing that the only way to really get to your destiny and your purpose in life is to do one thing, and that's to align your life with God. Let him be the compass in your life. Let him be your magnetic north.
Now, is this something that you started to develop at, I guess it would be 7, right?
You know, strangely enough, I did. I grew up really fast, and that was okay. You know, I had a mother there that poured into me, and I think that's one thing I strongly believe in. God's given me an opportunity and a platform to go out and do motivational speaking, and to be able to really encourage a lot of people of all ages, all different demographics, men and women. And that's a story sometimes I bring up, and sometimes I don't. It depends on the time and the place, you know.
If somebody's watching right now, and kids could be watching, and maybe there's somebody who's had something either happen to them when they were young, or maybe there's somebody young watching right now, and they just feel wrecked and destroyed, and they just don't know where to go. What could you say to them to help them get to the next step of life, to get through this really difficult time?
Realize, for years I was unable to talk about it, until just several years ago I couldn't talk about it without coming to tears. I had to realize that we have to give all of our cares to God. There is nothing that we can do on this earth that if someone else makes a decision that we have control over. First of all, it's not your fault, and second of all, give it to him. Give your cares to God and forgive. Forgive 70 times, 7 times a day. Whenever the person is least deserving of it, give them love. And know that there is, like I said, there's always the sunshine above the clouds, you know?
Let's talk a little bit just about forgiveness. I mean,
Yes.
how would you separate forgiveness from trying to forget about it? Which is a phrase you hear a lot.
That's one thing is you're never going to forget. We can't sit and pretend like we're going to be able to clear out our memories and it never happened. Things that happen, but you have to be willing.
Maybe denial is what I'm trying to say.
Well, yeah, you don't want denial either. You want to be able to forgive, and you know what? That's actually a very important point, is we don't need to forget. We need to use situations in our life to build character. And, you know, without fire, there's no refining in our life. The way that we get to olive oil, we have to crush the olive. You know, you have to go through situations in your life to really build that character. One of my firm beliefs that I have is God gives each and every one of us a destiny, and that's one thing I speak about, is that each and every one of us have a calling on this earth, regardless of what it is, regardless whether it's to be a CEO or the head janitor. Each and every one of us have a calling and a purpose and a destiny in this life. And I believe that it takes stepping stones. One of my favorite sayings is, we can use situations in life as stepping stones or stumbling blocks. Okay, and whenever you have a situation like that happen to you in your life, whenever you have a situation, whenever I was 9 to 13, I was a chubby little girl with frizzy curly hair, and everyone used to tease me, and I had a Bible club in school with my brother, and I was the chubby little Jesus freak that everyone would make fun of.
Okay, well, let's just hold it right there, because I know what it's like to be a chubby little kid. It messes with you, doesn't it?
It completely messes with you. I mean, I still sometimes have this little complex, you know, but there's different development stages in your life, and I believe that, you know, and then I went on to win, to do the Miss Arizona and to start doing beauty pageants, and, you know, I believe that developed character in my life and a humbleness to know that, you know what, beauty's within, and that's one thing my mom always taught me, is the true beauty comes from within. True beauty comes from God, and the way that it's always going to shine through is whenever it shines through and you can illuminate a room. That doesn't come from outward appearance, that comes from right here. I think the most important thing that being here today is I want to take a minute to really encourage people. And to every young girl, every young boy, every man or woman out there, you have a purpose for this life. And one of my favorite books is The Purpose-Driven Life. And, you know, people sometimes get caught up in the fact that society puts a definition on success. Success isn't monetary. Success is not what your job is, what kind of car you drive. Stop trying to keep up with the Joneses. That's not what God put you on this earth for. He put you on this earth for a purpose, and you have to be able to find that passion and that calling within your life.
How do you find it?
You have to seek God, and you have to sometimes put things aside. You have to realize that fitting in isn't always going to be the most important part.
Give me an example of putting something aside to find your purpose. Something you had to do.
Something I had to do, friends.
Specifically. Friends.
Sometimes it's lonely at the top, you know. Okay. I'm single. I don't have a lot of friends. I have a lot of acquaintances. I keep a few people that are close to me. You know, it's important to keep a few friends closer than a brother. You don't need 500,000 friends. I got caught up in a little bit, you know, whenever I grew up Christian and sheltered, and so I got a little bit into the party scene. And I remember at one point, I always felt this little voice in the back of my head saying, "Vanessa, what are you doing?" Vanessa, that was my conscious, and of course my mom.
It was your mom, right?
Both. It was God and my mom.
Hard to differentiate between mom and conscious.
Exactly. But I always just felt this little calling, and I remember at one point, I didn't hear that little voice anymore, and it scared the living daylights out of me. And I said, you know what, God? I said, I can either be here in this empty lifestyle, or I can have a purpose and a destiny and eternal life with you.
Okay, now that's a really important point when you don't hear that little voice.
That's the turning point.
That's the scary part.
That's the scary part. I'll never forget that night that I was out gallivanting around, and I remember I didn't hear that little voice anymore.
So what was the scene? And you realized, usually this is where I start to feel guilty, and all of a sudden you didn't feel it no more.
I'm just out with friends, you know, having a few drinks and just being not a woman of virtue and a woman of God.
And the voice wasn't there.
And the voice wasn't there.
When did you realize it wasn't there?
I remember sitting there, and I normally would always hear this little conscience in the back of my head, and I didn't hear it anymore, like I said, and I just said, okay, God. I said, I'm done, and I'm ready. And that's one thing, you know, it's never too late, but for the grace of God, go I, go you, go every person that's watching right now, is that God will come and he will forgive you. He's a God of forgiveness and love. His love is never ending, never failing, and you cannot let guilt coincide and come and take over your life and think that I've messed up, so I have no way of doing anything with my life. That's not true. Some of the most powerful people out there are people that have realized, you know, and one of my favorite pastors, Pastor Gus, he always tells me, he's like, Vanessa, it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Pastor Gus?
Yes, Pastor Gus. He's like my pastor in Phoenix.
Okay.
Wonderful, yeah. And he has an incredible story as well, and it goes back to saying, you know, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. It's picking yourself back up. A righteous man falls 7 times, but guess what? He gets up again. If you fall, you have to get back up again. Today I slipped on the street. I didn't stay on the street and freeze and cry. I got back up again.
A little bit, right?
Well, a little, but still. You know, and sometimes you need that, though.
Right.
We have to surround ourselves with people in our life. We have to surround ourselves with good, strong, solid people to bring us to that destiny. I believe one of the problems is right now in the graveyard, I believe that there's books, there's cures, there's things laying there because people were afraid. We have to get rid of that fear of failure. We have to get rid of that fear of thinking that what is everybody else thinking? Oh my goodness, I'm different, I'm gonna stand out. You know what, you wanna stand out because Jesus stood out, did he not? People persecuted him, they thought he was crazy. You know, Noah, they thought he was crazy. All these people in history that have been in the Bible that God gave a destiny, a purpose to, they stood out. You need to stand out amongst people. I, as a title holder, would go out and give speeches about God and about our country and have passion towards it, and people would say,
you stand out because
yeah,
you're kind of tall.
Well, I'm a little tall too. Thank you, Carman.
Right.
I am 6 foot, yes.
And heels will...
with heels, I'm about 6'4", 6'5", you know.
Right.
I have to, God made me this way. I embrace it, so.
We navigated through the snow. So
we did navigate through the snow. It was difficult, but we did it. So even in stilettos.
Okay, so we only got like another minute or so, and so just what would be the embodiment of your message that you'd want to convey to people? Like when you go somewhere and you're speaking, what are you trying to say to them? Because you may be speaking to yourself out there.
I am. Yeah, and that's the most important thing. You always have to speak to yourself. Like I said, take situations in life to build character. Use those moments of refining to build wisdom, to build character, and to build strength and courage to know that whenever you're at the bottom of that canyon, at some point there's going to be a mountaintop, and you cannot give up. You have to continue to use those situations in your life as stepping stones. The one thing that God gave us above all is free will. Use those choices, use those decisions wisely, and know that every decision you make today affects your tomorrow. And eventually, you're going to reach that mountaintop. And it's not always going to be a lot of people up there. Sometimes it's going to be cold. Sometimes it's going to be raining. But eventually, you're going to reach that mountaintop, and you're going to find that destiny, that purpose that God has given you in your life, because you definitely are a royalty. You are chosen of the Most High King. You're the child of the Most High King. I am, you are, and know that you're here on this earth for a purpose, and God knew you before you were ever conceived in the womb.
Vanessa, thank you.
Thank you so much, Carman.
Welcome
God
to
bless
TBN.
you. Thank you.